All right, Rob. Do you want to get put on blast right now, or do you want to put the final on blast first?
I mean, so I kind of want to lead off with this. So when I was like 6 or 7 years old, sorry, I'm getting some feedback right now. When I was like 6 or 7 years old, I played soccer, and when we played soccer, we would end every practice with like a little scrimmage between our teams. And I had one coach. Oh, 1 second. I had one coach where every single scrimmage would end with last goal wins. That was his policy. Whoever scores the last goal wins. And after 2 practices of dealing with that, I sat down during the scrimmage and refused to participate for the majority of the scrimmage because I knew I could conserve my energy and just do the last goal, and then I would go win. So I would appreciate it if some challengers followed a similar suit to that.
I mean, some of them did. They walked.
This final was like, because there was pretty much no advantage whatsoever in any way, shape, or form to the entire team portion if you came in first place. There was no advantage to it.
Tori got screwed. If you told Tori, go fail this team final, then you can pull Emmy off a ramp twice, and then you get to pick CT for the final stage, which is the only stage that matters. I guarantee you she would have done it. She would have sat down on the side, gotten second, and pulled Emmy off the ramp.
I don't know if she would have done it, but that would have been the correct move.
Because she outperformed Kaycee for basically every part of this final. Even during the last stage, she was outpacing her for a lot of it.
We have to take this into account, though, that Kaycee had a broken toe during the final. And so I think we factor that in. Her performance is very admirable.
Yes, I agree with that. And here's
the thing. Sure, she had a fucking broken toe.
Well, my thing with that though, like,
this is all right. This is now all right. Now let's put Rob McIntyre on fucking blast. Chris is involved in this too. You two last week talking about you couldn't see Kaycee winning a final. She doesn't look like she's ready to compete. All this fucking bullshit, dude. And she comes down and shoves it down your fucking throat.
But she just got a private CT on the last leg and then came and won.
It doesn't matter. She fucking won. This all goes back to what you were saying, that it doesn't look like she's ready to win and compete in these confessionals. It doesn't fucking matter.
Yeah,
it doesn't matter.
That's what we found out. She fell ass backwards into a win this season. Okay,
she knew she was going to win in those confessionals where she quote unquote didn't look like she was ready.
That wasn't what I was saying.
All right.
I meant that she didn't look assertive in the beginning of the final, which since she had a broken toe, makes sense.
Yeah. I think the big thing here is we found out with this final format, and even the format for the whole fucking season, you can fall ass backwards into a win. This is worse than some of the team season wins we've seen, because she literally won nothing the whole season, did nothing other than keep Josh under control until he was gone. And then she really did nothing. She went on dates with Nani at the house. I guess that's something, whatever. And then her girlfriend, she gets paired up with her in an elimination, who her girlfriend was never going to win that elimination. She's terrible at these eliminations. And then for sucking, she gets to pick the best male partner. And for the final leg, and if it was like a timed thing, she would have lost the whole thing. But because the only leg that mattered was the final leg, she and CT just had to be slightly ahead the whole time. And they made it work. I give them props. But shit, she fell ass backwards into this win.
I think it's completely unfair to say that she did nothing. I think throughout the season,
I agree with that.
I think politically she was elite throughout the season. Just because they didn't show us what she was doing, I think we've talked about this before. She's a boring player, right? That doesn't mean she's a bad player. She's just a boring player. There's nothing for them to show.
I agree with that. Yeah,
she's in the driver's car politically throughout the entire course of the season. There's no way she's going to get thrown in, and there's no way anyone's going to pick her to go in too because of how strong she is from a competitive perspective.
Yeah, no, that's fair. I get frustrated by it because it's like I guess it's the Survivor syndrome. If you play Survivor perfectly, it's usually a boring game. Like Boston Rob, the year he finally won was one of the most boring seasons because he literally sleptwalk all the way to that $1 million. And that's similarly what happened here.
I mean, I think throughout the season, I would probably place Tori a little bit ahead of her for overall season performance, but she was, I thought, very good throughout the season. I mean, she was very good at missions. She was on that Emerald team that won like everything. She won a couple of missions even before that when she was in pairs. She's proven to be a very good competitor throughout her time. So I'm not saying that as much, but I thought the way that they handled this final was an absolute share.
You know what this final was? And I was talking about this with my sister last night. This final was the fucking Lord of the Rings trilogy, because it's 3 trilogies about walking where nothing matters until the ring really falls in Mount into Mordor. Okay. You've got Nani as Samwise telling Kaycee to go, Kaycee, go here. You can go. You've got Emmy and Devin that are Gollum combined talking about their preciouses and running around doing nothing. You've got Tori and Kyle who are Merry and Pippin, who aren't bad, but they're mostly just happy to be there. And you got Nelson, who's Sean Bean, because he always dies in every movie and never makes it to the end. And then you've got CT as the noble Aragon, who just once again swoops in, and these idiots don't, take him as the force that he should be. And he wins the final. Like, there was zero doubt he was winning this final, like zero.
I mean, he was pretty beaming in his confessionals. Like he was not hiding anything.
And Devin looked like he was on the verge of tears the entire confessionals for this final. Like, it was just like, oh, let's not telegraph that he comes in third.
I definitely lost you.
Yeah, we can't hear you, Devin.
I was on mute. It was like in the first All-Stars when Yes, in his finals confessionals, started to like wear the fedora. You know, he just was showing how good of a good mood he was in, and CT was just grinning ear to ear pretty much the entire time.
Yep.
Yeah, I mean, there was pretty much no advantage coming in first for the team portion, except for the fact that you didn't have to compete in the elimination. The elimination, I thought, was, if out of all eliminations that they could do, I thought that one was one of the worst that they could do, because it was big person beats small person. That's it. That's what it came down to. There was no way of getting around that. There was no way Nelson was going to win that. There was no way Nani was going to win that.
With Nelson, so he did actually beat Hunter in a very similar elimination on Dirty 30. But if you go back and rewatch that one, it was set up differently, where there was like different quadrants you could pull off, and you just had a color of your quadrant that you need to pull them off on. And what he would do is wait till Hunter got him really close to Hunter's quadrant, and then conserve all his energy for that, and then pull Hunter off to the side. So I even thought if they edited a little bit like that, or at least you can add some strategy. But there's very little tactics involved with this. This is just pull.
And on top of just size, the height advantage is really what you need here, because the more leverage you have, the more ability you have to pull and reach. And so like Kyle is several inches taller than Nelson. There was zero chance for Nelson here.
Yeah, I mean, he didn't have a chance. I mean, Nelson performed like dog shit in this episode, like absolute dog shit. He couldn't perform worse. And when I talk about how it takes a perfect situation for Nelson to win a final, this is what I'm talking about. He had to tap out in the swimming portion, and I thought it was a little bit ridiculous that there was no penalty that we were able to discern whatsoever for him having to pretty much, I thought he should have been completely DQ'd. No, I'm joking. I thought that there should have been some type of penalty. Then when they get to the portion where they have to compete in the 3 squares checkpoint, they pretty much go out of their way to make him look like a complete fool in his performance. So I don't know. This is why I'm completely skeptical over the idea that Nelson could ever win. I think it could happen. I just think it's extremely unlikely.
I mean, if he was on the last portion, he would have been able to run at least. Like if he could remember 10 numbers, he would have been able to win.
I know, but that's what I mean. It like takes that much for him to get there. You know what I mean? He's fighting uphill on this. I feel like this was a perfect example of why he hasn't won a mission in how many missions now at this point?
52. Well, I guess 51 because it doesn't count.
51, dude. You think he'd be able to fall ass backwards and won at some point?
Seriously, like that's a team season for half of it.
That's insane.
Yeah,
that says a lot. On a team season, he can't even get one of these.
That is crazy. The
whole situation is just insane to me, this final, because that puzzle, all right, the fact that CT literally walked down there and was like, okay, I got this, and then within maybe 2 minutes they're out of there, whereas the other team was probably there 15 20 minutes before they were able to even get out of there, and they had a huge lead, had that quote unquote advantage. I don't know that winning is an advantage in that team portion.
Would have been for him. It
would have been for Nelson, because I mean, quite frankly, I still think he'd lose, because let's go on. The other team wins. We'll go with me here. The other team loses this time. So CT goes up against Devin. Bye, Devin. Nice to see you.
That's not good for him.
And then Emmy and Tori, I would edge it towards Tori, but yeah, okay. So
I think Tori is a relatively significant advantage in that.
Yeah. CT and Tori look at each other at the end of that and go, we're partners.
Yeah.
Like, there's no way that CT's picking Emmy or he's not picking Kaycee or Nani over Tori. He's just not.
And then,
so yet again, another instance where production lies to the cast. They told them that they did not want to go into this, and for some of them, they probably did want to go.
I mean, Kaycee wins because she goes in.
Yeah,
exactly. Yeah. I think it was complete bullshit that they gave them, the people who won the elimination, the option to switch. They should have given the people that won the first day an option to switch somehow. I don't know how they should have done it, but figured that out.
So what I would have done is had both teams compete in the eliminations. The first day team, whoever wins that elimination between the two of them, the other person doesn't go home. They're still there. But the one who wins gets to pick. If you have to have it set up like this, I think that's much fairer.
But then think about how much longer we're watching 4 rounds of eliminations. I mean,
we don't have to give Nani and Kaycee like half an hour then.
I mean, fuck, we got like we got 90 minutes to go through this bullshit. I don't know. Yeah, it took up a ton of time in the middle of the episode. Yeah, I don't know. I don't really.
People like these mid-episode eliminations, like these mid-final eliminations. I think they're usually pretty bad.
I think it's terrible.
Really yeah, I mean the one that they did before this in Total Madness, where it was Johnny versus Rogan, where they had to jump up and touch the bell. That's one of the all-time worst eliminations. Right?
There's that, and then I remember on World of the Worlds 1, they did the one that was Hunter versus Ninja, and they very clearly had to change it because everyone was so dead after the first day of that final that they were like, we can't do anything that intense. They just like really holding some ropes behind a truck that was moving, and Hunter still just like tapped out. But like, they're usually just bad eliminations. Like, they're just not well designed.
Yeah, I mean, quite frankly, making the final means that you should not get purged during the final, in my opinion. The only time that I was in favor of it was War of the Worlds 2, the way they did it. You know,
I didn't like that either.
I didn't like that they did it, but if you're going to do it, that's the way they do it. You make everybody participate in the elimination, and everybody that got into the final leg had to complete it. Not this, oh, you came in last, so you're going into elimination. Good luck. I mean, that's bullshit to me.
At that point, though, like, there really is no advantage whatsoever in coming in first. Like, and how maddening.
Just time the events.
Yeah, I know. Like, how maddening was it that after all of that, for the last leg, everyone started at the exact same fucking time?
I mean, like, I don't know what, once they'd already put themselves in that situation, like, I can give Devin and Emmy like a 2-minute advance because they were both on the purple cell. I don't know what you do with that, but like, I think this was the worst final since Gauntlet 2. I really do. I think it was that bad.
Do you think production realizes how idiotic all of this is?
So I was curious if we're just like in an inside baseball environment and this is just us. So I went on like their Twitter account and saw what the replies to it were. It was like 80-20, negative to positive, I would say. And all the positive comments, none of them knew how to spell Kaycee's name. So I don't know how closely they were watching the show.
They're teenagers, basically.
Yeah. But like, I don't know how you can watch that and find that to be a satisfying way to end things.
If you're not a fan, if you're not a CT Uber fan, that final was very unsatisfying for you. And I like CT. I'm glad he won. He deserved it. Okay.
He deserved to win, clearly.
This was his Boston Rob season. That's what I was saying in Discord last night. This guy literally pitched a perfect game when he's the biggest threat to win. He still never came close to going into an elimination, just like Boston Rob never came close to getting voted out. He won when he had to. Same with Boston Rob when he won immunity challenges. He won when he had to. And then when it gets to the nitty gritty and they should have tried to throw him in, they were all too scared to because they were worried about having to get called in against him one-on-one, and it was too late. And then basically he gets to this final, and instead of reverting to old CT, when Devin was dragging ass up the hill, he was encouraging him. I mean, the girls like Emmy and Tori are like way out in front of the guys, and he's trying to nurse Devin up the hill. Kaycee's got a hurt toe.
Was so bad throughout this whole final.
He was terrible.
Like, it's crazy if CT wasn't in this final. Who would have won? I guess Kyle might have fallen into it. But
no,
like,
Kyle would have. They only lost by 15 seconds.
Yeah, I guess I can't even say that because the end of this thing was such a joke that any of them reasonably could have won.
And Devin memorized all 20 numbers if he could have run faster.
Actually, it's funny to me too how long it took them to actually get the code right at the very end. Like how many tries it seemed like they went through putting it in. Just so like they eventually stumbled into it and didn't have to go back. I thought that was notable. But
that was something that we haven't talked about yet was Devin in this final. He was able to remember all 20 numbers at the end to be able to get the combination correct. But other than that, he sucked. I mean, his endurance came out to show it almost cost purple. If it wasn't for the inability of orange to be able to do puzzles, it really could have hurt purple in a significant way.
like, I mean, in the last stage, Emmy seems well ahead of him for most of that run.
Mm-hmm.
It's just, I honestly, I even thought Emmy performed better than Kaycee did throughout the majority of this final. Like, I don't.
He had a broken toe. We can't refer.
But my thing is, Devin, like,
toe.
that's like saying, all right, Muggsy Bogues wasn't that bad at defense for being 5'3". Like, it's the circumstance of what's going on.
Yeah, it's completely fucking different. Muggsy Bogues isn't gonna fucking grow. Her toe's gonna get fucking better.
But that's the circumstance that it is for right now.
Whatever. Sure, Rob. Go ahead. Try and chop Kaycee down. She fucking won. She put it in your fucking face. Game over.
I give her props for winning, but to me, it's like, honestly, the only reason she won is because her girlfriend is terrible at eliminations. That is the only reason.
I mean,
who isn't she gonna beat?
She's probably.
She
I think
loses
Tori
to
maybe
Tori in
beats her,
that.
but like no, but Kaycee she beats the vast majority of the female cast. She beat.
Well, it was
Priest in the
also a
last
crappy
versus her.
female cast too. Let's be honest.
I mean,
Yeah.
sure, but there's been a lot of bad female casts.
But that's the thing. Like
now.
the circumstances unfolded perfectly for her to where she played the right political game, and all she had to do was beat Nani, not difficult, in a one-on-one elimination, and then just keep up with CT on a run. That was it.
Let's be real. This is the third final she's made in the first 3 seasons that she's been on.
Yeah,
I'm doing something right.
No,
And
I
in
don't
the
want to. I'm not trying to think. I think she's a very deserving winner. Like in terms of an overall resume that she has. I thought his performance in this final wasn't deserving of a winner, but I thought overall as a competitor, like
I think she's probably
top 6, top 5 female ever now, right?
no,
5. No, dude.
no,
no way.
Let's not get too out there now.
Well, I mean, her and Emily's resumes are very similar.
Well, you know what? If Kaycee Kaycee will be back. Let's put it this way: if production loves her, so she's coming back. If she is able to string together another win or two, then it would be hard to keep her out of that conversation because politically, there's no sniff of her ever being in trouble any of these 3 seasons ever.
She's likable.
She is very likable, and she makes smart moves, and she's aligned with the right people. And when her alliance falls down around her, she's still fine. You know, Fessy is, gone home. He kind of ruined her chance last year because he was pushing her too hard. But this year he goes home, Josh goes home, and she's still fine. She's the last big brother person standing, and she's still fine.
No, I mean, she's very good. Politically, I don't know if there's anyone better than her, to be honest. I would have to.
So why did you guys recoil at her being top 6 ever then?
Her resume is not big enough yet. Like I wouldn't even have Emily Schramm in a top 6. Like, yeah, she's a great competitor, but she's only got 1 win.
I think it's this. I'm not going by like career resumes. I guess I shouldn't even say resume. I'm not going by like I was picking a peak female to have on my team. Like I think she's very much in that mix.
And I think that's a very poor way to do it. So I think the best way to do it, and I think this tries to get to the point of what you're talking about, is if someone was on a season, who has the highest probability of winning that season? Right?
In peak condition, we'll say.
Sure. Yeah. Like who has the greatest probability to win? If we thought about like that, I don't know. I would need to think about it. I think that's a very good question, though. I think that's a good point to bring up.
Yeah, I think she's probably better than Cara right now. You'd have to say.
Yeah, I mean,
politically, yes, I would say that she is a better politician than Cara. The difference, though, is that Cara can go in and bang in an elimination.
But she hasn't lost one.
I think Kaycee is better than Cara in elimination. So I think this is the wrong crowd to talk about Cara Maria, though. I don't think none of us are diehard Cara Marias.
Yeah, but
we don't need a diehard. That's a biased opinion.
But see, here's the thing, okay? And I will say this about Cara. I respect her greatly for her game. I don't like her, but that doesn't mean that I don't respect. She's probably one of the best people to play the game. You know,
she made like 5 finals in a row.
Or she made a ton of finals. She's won twice. right? Twice.
Yeah, twice. Yeah, with Vendetta.
And granted, one of them was the Bloodlines final, but it's still a win is a win.
But better final than this one.
And then she won Vendettas, which again, crappy final, but a win is a win. But I cannot deny that she's not one of the best competitors ever because she has such a large resume. And her losses are not like glaringly horrible. Other than her first loss in Fresh Meat 2, the rest of her losses aren't terrible. I mean, she lost to Emily and Paula on Rivals 2. You've got the crappy Fresh Meat team on Battle of the Seasons. No, they're not winning that because they've got a huge anchor on their team. You've also got the other loss was Laurel when she had a broken hand and had to use her hand to actually do the elimination. And you're going against Laurel. Like, her losses aren't horrible.
I'm trying to think through. Has Kaycee ever been voted in when she didn't want to be on her 3 seasons of the show?
No, she went in when it was politically advantageous to get a skull in her first 2 seasons.
That's pretty crazy.
I mean, this might be as dominant of a performance or more than CT this season. I mean, let's think.
I don't know. Right? I don't think people perceived Kaycee as a huge threat, and maybe that's part of her Jedi mind trick is that they did not feel that.
Yeah.
Like for her to like convince people that she's not a threat, and I think CT did that to an extent too, because I think at the end of the day, that's what makes CT's win this season more impressive, is because he won last season. People know who CT is. They know his background.
And
still, they did not put him in. That's what makes this so important. I think
look at the rest of the guys' cast too. It's not like on Dirty 30 where there's or War of the Worlds 1 where there's like a lot of them who have, a track record of being successful. He was like the only one.
I think that's what we need to focus on. We've already talked about how we think that they should have thrown CT in. We're past that at this point. I think we need to focus on how impressive it was that CT was able to convince them that he should not go in, right? That's what's is this CT's most impressive win?
I think I'd have to say yes.
I would say yes, and Rivals 2 is probably right behind it.
Yeah, because but last season was very impressive too, but it's definitely better than War of the Worlds 2. It's better than Invasion, where he really wasn't great, honestly, throughout that season. And
he would have lost that if Nelson could swim. That's the That's the thing. Like, he won and he deserved the win, but Nelson was smoke showing it until he couldn't swim.
So I would say it probably is his most impressive. I think this was an extremely impressive win by him. I really think too, like a lot of people will say it was like cowardice for why he didn't get voted in at a certain point. I really think most of the guys on that cast did not view it as a big issue that he was in the final. I think that was more than any sort of like delaying the inevitable loss or anything of that. I really think that they were overconfident enough to think that they had a chance of beating him in the final. And I don't think Kyle was 10 seconds behind him. So like,
I don't think that's true at all. Like, I don't think that's
I don't
true.
think it is. I think they were scared to go against him. I think they were scared of getting called in.
Because Kyle talked about how he wanted to run a final with CT because he knows CT just pretty much like births finals. They were aware of like how good he performs in these.
I don't think it's as much. They don't see it as much of an issue that he's in the final.
I don't know. They may not see it as an issue, but I think if you asked every single one of them who the favorite to win that final was, they would have said CT.
Yeah, and they have
No,
I get that. But I just remember Devin at one point saying he thinks he can beat CT in a final, which I just think is crazy. But
yeah, what I will say this though, this was also Kyle's best season. Like, no question to me. Like,
I feel like this is how Kyle does every single season.
Yeah, I don't think this is that different.
No. But I really think like he had to win 2 eliminations that were not easy. And then he loses this one by 15 seconds. Whereas on Vendettas, I didn't feel at any point he was going to win that final. Like, there was no point. Like, he made it. I didn't think he was going to win it when I watched it live. And then he hadn't been in any other fight. Well, he was in Total Madness.
No,
I didn't think he was going to win that either. Once Bananas made that final, I was like, that's his to lose now.
I mean, he wins. Is it 3 or 2 eliminations on War of the Worlds 1? I forget either way, but I think was more impressive competitively that season, even though he didn't make the final. He just went against the Titan in elimination and lost.
I think the difference here, though, is he made interesting political decisions that kept him, he made the right moves at the right time. And I mean, I feel like I feel like he could have won that if he could have just memorized that number 30 seconds quicker. They win, you know. They caught up to Kaycee. They left that CT and Kaycee left that rock. They showed it on the final. He and Tori were still up there looking at the number, and CT and Kaycee were already at the bottom, and it took a while to get down that rock because they showed how hard it was to get up the rock. So they made up all that time because of Kaycee's toe. And if they could have just done it 30 seconds faster, they would have won. He was that close.
I mean, to even say he was that close to, like, if the final comes down to one, she's just going to be close. Like, that's the part of the reason why they do it, probably.
Yeah. I mean, I just, end of the day, I mean, y'all can disagree with me. That's fine. I really, really feel like this was his best season, like all around his best season.
Kyle?
Yeah.
I don't really feel strongly for or against that, to be honest. Like, I feel like all of his seasons for me blend together.
Yeah. But the thing is, too, though, so much of this veterans cast didn't have to do that much.
Yeah. I mean, it was pretty much, how many veterans actually went home that weren't in the
I mean, it was 7 of 8 in the final were vets, and they were the minority going into the season.
Josh went home. Corey went home.
Fessy went home.
Ashley
went home.
But Fessy's DQ'd, though. Like, somebody
Ashley and Fessy were DQ'd.
And Anissa.
Here, so for the men, it was Josh and Corey. For the women, it was Amanda, Big T, Ashley.
I don't think we can count the Ashley ones, though. Like, that's different to me.
Okay, so
I guess you would say Big T went home twice then, though. But
yeah, Big T went home twice.
Yeah.
Anissa, well, you can't really count Anissa.
Yeah, she's DQ'd. Injury.
So two true eliminations on each side around there.
That's just like, I mean.
It just shows you what happens when you throw amateurs in against veterans. Like when you have that many rookies and they can't get their shit together.
Well, I would say this, amateurs that don't really know the show. Right? Because
yeah.
So in Survivor, we've seen in the fans' favorite seasons that they've done, or in a lot of seasons in the more distant past, when they brought in new players to compete against returning players, it has not gone well. But the most recent occurrence where this happened, where they brought in new players, first returning players, the new players were much more seasoned and were actual fans of the show, knew the mechanics, and were very experienced at the game. And it did not go well for the returning players, right? And so I think that's the big difference. That if they are going to bring in a lot of new people like this, they have to know how to play the game.
My thing is, I even think about like when Ed put himself into elimination in favor of Logan. Like, my thing is with that.
How many times did that happen? People volunteer to put themselves in.
Well, my thing is that, and I can see in his head, where if he's like, look, oh, this will make good TV. I can see why he would think in his head that would be a good TV moment for him to do that. When you don't have the relationship built up between the two of them pretty much at all throughout the season, and that doesn't like culminate in a certain thing, like with Nelson and Corey, for example, where it's clear that like there's more going on there than with the Logan Ed example. That just doesn't resonate with TV or on this type of show. And like that wouldn't happen if he had actually been able to watch the show before, I don't think. I know there was a couple, like Corey knew what he was doing, Kels knew what he was doing, like a couple of them knew what they were doing. Vast majority of these rookies just did not know what was going on.
So Rob, now with the benefit of hindsight, does my ranking in our top 6 worst seasons of all time, which if you haven't listened to it yet, people that are listening, go listen to it. You can get it, the full episode on Patreon, patreon.com/The Challenge Chronicles. We ranked top 6 worst seasons of all time. I had Spies, Lies, and Allies ranked number 1, and this was with like 4 or 5 episodes left. How does that ranking look now?
Pretty damn good.
I still feel like I need some space to judge where my thing is, I do think that there was a couple things that I like. The variety and switching from the pairs to the teams throughout the season. I like that we got a bit of that. There was a mix up of formats, usually that they moved to things that I like. There were still a couple episodes that were pretty solid. Actually, solid's not even strong enough. Like they were actually really good episodes. So, I would need some space. This final though, to me, was a huge black mark. I thought this was a disaster.
We at some point need to do top 6 finals and top 6 worst finals because I mean, good Lord, this thing was atrocious. And I did not. I mean, it's still better than the Final Reckoning final, but that final,
No, it's not.
It's bad.
No, it's not. Final Reckoning final was way better than this one.
If it's way
from an
better
entertainment
than
perspective and rewarding.
I have not seen it since it aired because I have refused to rewatch it until we have to. But if it is objectively worse than Final Reckoning, this is the worst final since Gauntlet 2, which you have to put a big asterisk next to because of what was planned versus what happened due to the weather. But man, because this was bad.
I think you can make an argument it's the worst final ever. I thought it was unacceptably bad.
At least Gauntlet 3 is like equitable in some way, right? I mean, the veterans or the veterans figured out a way how to game the final, but at least
they lost.
There was some strategy behind it, right? There was some approach that you could take to it. With this, it was pretty much largely random chance.
And it was also like cohesive. At the very least, like the veterans had been the veterans and the rookies had been the rookies throughout the season. It wasn't all right, singles and the teams and the pairs. Like, we don't want that in a final. Like to have CT and it's not like CT and Kaycee had any relationship throughout the season that was like rewarding to see them win.
I wonder how much of this is we have 90 minutes. We have to think of something to be able to show. And so they all of these different machinations.
That's unacceptable to me. Like on World of Worlds 1, the final runs about 2 hours and they have plenty of stuff to show, and there was still stuff they didn't air.
Well, I mean, this was over 2 hours.
Well, I sort of say what I'm saying. Like they've been able to show the capability to do it before.
Like I said, it was the Lord of the Rings. All you had to do was fucking walk. That's it. Just walk.
Like, I would, if I was a cast member, I would have been upset. Like if I was Tori, I would be legit upset with this final. Like it's just not. It's at some point it seems like it's manipulation of like outcome.
Yeah, at some point it is producer manipulation, but I mean, I don't think you can really count it as manipulation when it's just incompetence. Because unfortunately, I think that's what it is.
If we took them to court, they would plead insanity, that they just don't know what they're doing.
What do we want to talk about now?
I don't know.
Overall, let's do this now while there's like a decent time for us to be able to reference this back throughout the rest of the time that we talk. Overall letter grade for the season.
D+.
Again, I feel like I just feel like I need some type of space from this a terrible final, because I really didn't think a lot of the season was that bad. I know that was controversial to you guys, but I think not only with the final being this bad, I also feel like the season really lacked a cohesive storyline outside of the Vets Alliance dominating. Like this final culmination with like this Nany Kaycee elimination, you really didn't see the relationship that much throughout the season, I don't think. Like they had that one fake date. But like if you compare that to like on World of Worlds 2, for example, where the Polly and Cara and the Jordan Tori and the Cam, like those relationships are very fulcrum to what's going on with the season. Whereas this season didn't feel like that with Nany and Kaycee. Felt like they were in control the entire time and there was no threat of them ever being broken up.
So what's your letter grade?
Yeah.
I'll
go C- for now, but I reserve the right to change that in the near future, either up or down.
I'm gonna go with a D.
Yeah. The only reason I give it a D+ is like Rob said, there were a couple episodes that were very, very good, but 2 very, very good episodes in a bunch of 19 with a shitty
19.
final in a bad format for the first half. I actually was fine with the way they did the teams part. I wish they had done the teams part the whole season. That would have been interesting, even with this cast, because it would have forced some different strategy. But the way this format was labeled with the partners, and you could just pick any 2 people, regardless of who their partner was, it just allowed for just the vets to run the table, and the rookies were never going to sniff a win unless they fell into one. I mean, it just was atrocious. And I was trying to be optimistic about the season as we were going through it. And I couldn't believe last night that I was saying Double Agents was a better season than this season. And it was. And Double Agents, I think I graded it a C+. So it wasn't like it was this great success, but it was better than this.
There was something else that
what do we think will like? I always feel like with the challenge is primarily to me driven by relationships, whether they're adversarial or positive. Like, what do we think are like the big relationship storylines we remember from this season?
Like, with the relationships that we remember, or like what do we remember from
Like
the season?
I suppose I shouldn't say relationships, but like, what are the forces like combating each other, like storylines we remember from the season?
Yeah, I would just put it like 5 years from now, when we think of Spies, Lies, and Allies, what do we think of? It's tough to say now because it just happened, but I think the bullshit final that has to be number one.
Well, that's the thing, right?
Because the issue though is when I think of Gauntlet 2, I don't think the first thing that I think of isn't the final.
Yeah,
you know, I don't think of that. So I mean, it's probably not that. I mean, I'd probably think about.
I suppose what I'm saying is like, what are the conflicts that you think drove this season forward? Like, I think last season it was like CT versus Cam was kind of a conflict where Cam was leading a group to try to get to what's the best way we can deal with CT, and then they failed in the end. Or Amber versus Fessy was like Amber versus Big Brother was a conflict where she had, and then also her with like the itty bitty community was a conflict. Like there was actually like conflicts like that to drive the story forward.
So if you're taking it from that perspective, like there's nothing. There was no conflict really. There was like very minimal.
Like Devin versus Tori.
Yeah.
Who?
Devin versus Tori.
That's the
like,
closest we came to
anything.
real
There was
conflict.
no conflict because at the end of the day, like they pretty much voted on the same page, right?
That's the thing. It didn't mean anything.
Yeah, like there was no conflict. Like they steamrolled the rookies throughout the entire course of the season.
They had a fight and made up. That's what happened. Okay.
Like, you
Same
think
with
of-
Kyle and CT. They had a fight. They made up.
Like you think of like Total Matters, which is not a season I enjoy, but like you have Wes versus Johnny for the first half of the season, then you have the D versus Jenny storyline that gets shelved because of the D situation. You have like Nelson and Corey trying to like keep Nelson like placated, and then him eventually putting himself.
You have the incredible Bear Kayla romance.
Or like World of the Worlds 1, you have the great like Wes versus Bear with Georgia and Hunter caught in between, and then you have Polly versus Kyle. Like you have all these different conflicts that actually drive action forward. I don't know what, like Tori versus Amanda, I guess that was kind of a conflict, but I never felt like we actually got that on screen.
We did it this season because the majority of the cast was rookies. So it was veterans versus rookies, and the veterans put all their bullshit aside to do that. And when they realized that they're just going to cakewalk towards the end, there was no need for conflict. So when you have several weeks where you're not working against each other, you don't build up animosity, you don't build up tension, you just get to the end and then it's like, all right, here we go. I mean, I don't blame the cast for that. Like, that's the thing. I blame production.
No, yeah.
CT and Kaycee won a season and they should be commended for winning the season. And I will never take that away from them. The problem is that production gave them these circumstances and they took advantage and won. Good for them. Good for them. Shame on production for this shitty final. A bajillion rookies who didn't know what the hell they were doing that created a season where literally nothing happened. Like nothing happened. Like I will forget. I've already forgotten 90% of what happens on this season because nothing happened.
Yeah, let's talk about it from that perspective. What are the most memorable moments from the season? You touched on it. Nothing really happened. I sent out that tweet that my friend sent me last night. That
I saw that.
What did it say, Rob? It was.
I can remember a time before COVID, but not before Spies, Lies, and Allies.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, Kel's dunking on Josh. I'll remember that. Nelson screaming Spies, Lies, and Allies on multiple points during this season. I'll remember that.
Like, I can't even remember. So we had that one Dynamite episode, right? I can't even remember
I can't even remember what happened. I really don't.
With the Corey versus Ashley like feud and stuff.
At this point, that's months ago.
That was 9 or 10 weeks ago. Like, I literally can't remember it.
And whatever happened, and it was at this point inconsequential, right? Because
that's the other thing to me.
What?
Just that it feels like so much of the scene didn't matter, and so much of the final didn't matter. So much of what we watched was completely inconsequential to the outcome.
Yeah. I mean, the entire first episode of the final, right? Episode 18, the part of episode 18 that was the final, that entire portion pretty much just determined who got to pick the team that they were on for the majority of episode 19, right? So it didn't even really matter that much. As long as you finish in the top 4, that's all that mattered. And then episode 19, the team's portion didn't even really matter because at the end of the day, depending on who you were, you did want to lose the team portion so you could pick your partner.
I would say it mattered. It just mattered in that losing was probably a better outcome if you were the better player on your team. Yeah.
We're saying the same thing. So like depending on who you were, like you did want to lose. And that was not spelled out to them, right? Like, and because if that was spelled out to them, that could be a situation where it's much more interesting.
Like I think Trace, now you know I've always been pretty big fans of the Rivals 2 final, right?
Mm-hmm. I think it's one of the best in hindsight.
Yeah, I just think that's a great job of like they got put in a bad situation, but we made a final where you can never watch that final. I think the better teams didn't win because they were tested in a comprehensive way. And there was obviously cardio involved, but you had to do a bunch of different skills throughout the final. And there was none of this gimmicky, like we're switching teams and pairs and all this stuff. That didn't happen.
How many hard sets were there where they like adjusted the length of time or the distance between each of the teams? They didn't have that in that final, did they?
No.
In Rivals 2, you're saying?
It was
never.
They had a purge on the first day of the final. So basically they did a swim, a puzzle, and a canoe, and the bottom two got cut on each sex. The bottom pair got cut on each sex. But the day 2 final, they started them, and it was just a straight grueling race until the end. And that to me is a final. And they tested them everywhere. You had to test cardio, you had to test endurance, you had to test your eating ability, you had to test your puzzle solving ability. Like they literally tested them, everything you would want to test someone in a final that is a physical competition. Everything mattered, and the better teams won. Like CT and West were training that whole season to run a final in Thailand, and Johnny was quite frankly out of shape for that final. He was not in final shape, and they lost because Johnny was not prepared to run that final in Thailand, and he kind of coasted. West and CT worked their ass off, and they won.
And like the thing is too, like I'm always somebody who prefers a close matchup than like a blowout. But it doesn't mean it's not impressive to watch somebody have a really impressive performance. Like we don't need a manufactured drama like that. Like it's still engaging to watch CT and West destroy that final. It's engaging to watch like Jordan completely torch the Dirty 30 final. Like that's not a bad viewing experience. So they don't need to like make it this situation where it's a 25 seconds separating the winner and loser because you only had one stage to determine who wins the entire season.
So something that people want us to talk about, and I think we definitely should talk about it. Now that CT has won this final, his 5th final, where does this position him in the all-time rankings for male competitive?
In terms of what? Like who, we're having a season tomorrow, who am I picking, or just a career resume?
That's not the right way to do this.
Well, that's how I look at it.
I know it's the incorrect way to do it. And we did we won't get into this. So career resume. That's how we're going to do this for now.
Okay.
If you had to ask me, you could make a case for either Bananas or CT as the greatest of all time, but I think this entire resume win at this point for CT makes him the greatest person to ever play the game. He might have 2 less championships right now, but I mean, he was introduced to this show in 2003, 18 years ago, and the man is still winning champion. He didn't win until the second half of his career. And the only reason he didn't win in the first half of his career is because he was so self-destructive.
Like, yeah, I would lean CT at this point. I think because like if he stumbles into a win, like if Tina and Tanya pick up the cardio and he wins Inferno 2, or if Katie screws up the puzzle and he wins Inferno, like I don't view that as really better or worse for him. Like it's hard for me to contextualize that.
You're only as good as your worst player in those finals, and they had 2 issues in both of those finals that cost them those wins.
Or if Easy wasn't on the team, did either of you mention that?
Hey, well, we didn't mention Gauntlet 3.
Hey, we didn't mention Gauntlet 3.
He would have won that. I mean, how many people would have gotten their first win if they had just gotten rid of Easy or just walked? Just walked. All they had to do was walk. We've talked about this. It really is insane to me that since Rivals, how much the man has evolved. Rivals was the comeback year after what many assumed would be a permanent blackball because of what happened on Duel 2. Well, he comes in as a mercenary. They bring him back. He's having a great season on Rivals, and he fell short in the last elimination because of his partner. Then he comes back on Rivals 2, Smoke shows it and wins. X's, he was there, and if DM had gone a little bit slower, they probably win that final, but she kept pushing him too fast and he gassed out. I mean, just top to bottom. And then, DM dies and he takes more time off and he comes back a little out of shape and he still wins out of shape. Like he wins Invasion. He wins War of the Worlds 2 and he's really out of shape. Now he's back in incredible shape and dominating. Like it's just two of Johnny's wins came from the island and the ruins. And that doesn't make those wins ineffective. It doesn't count. But every one of CT's wins has been impressive. Whereas on the ruins, okay, he played the game well. It was fine, but look at that challengers team. The island. I love the island, but it was they picked the final team.
He nuked his position as much as anything.
Kenny saved his ass into that final.
Yeah.
So, I mean, he kind of backdoored his way into a couple wins there. And that doesn't mean they don't count or they're not impressive, but CT's overall resume is better at this point. And if he ties bananas, it will be no question he's better.
Because Johnny is also how many good partners has CT had in partner seasons?
2.
Wes
and
who's the
DM?
Second one? I guess DM is okay.
DM's good.
I don't think I think if Camilla is much better than DM though on X's one.
Yeah. But DM was amazing in that final. She just pushed it too fast and CT ran out of gas in the snow. I mean, that's the only reason they lost.
Yeah.
But he's had some shitty partners. Veronica.
Yeah. Adam
King. Who was his partner in World of Worlds 1?
One of the Doublemint twins.
Zahid? No.
Zahid was Zach's partner. He had one of the Doublemint twins. I forget if it was Liz or Julia. I think it was Julia, but I'm not sure.
Great.
No.
So yeah. Johnny's always had amazing partners. He's never had a bad partner.
Who's his worst partner?
CT or Johnny?
Johnny. Vince?
No, I actually think Vince was pretty good.
Morgan
was probably his worst partner.
Maybe Morgan, but Morgan is just hard because we don't even
really have a resume. Yeah,
because in their elimination, she doesn't do anything. She just hands them flags.
Yeah, I think she's probably the worst one. If Kaycee had said yes to X's one, that would have been number one with a bullet.
All right. Question.
Mm-hmm.
Nick Saban national championships or CT challenge wins rest of career?
Saban.
Saban's 70, dude.
Yeah, CT's 41.
Yeah.
I know, and he's at his peak. That's what I wanted to bring up earlier. He's better now than he's ever been before. Yes, from an all-around perspective, yes, definitely. From
I would say that CT is at his peak and he should be on the downslope, but he's at his peak.
Strategically,
he's really good on Rivals too, man.
He is, but he was still angry. He was angry.
Yeah, but he made it work politically. They're not in threat at all.
But he's not angry now. That part of him is gone, right? And that used to be a huge liability, and he has figured out how to just harness it, right? So it's not an issue.
Yeah. I would lean to we can do this. We need to make sure we talk about the decision stuff too at the end because
we do. Here's my thing, and the reason I will say CT over Saban. All right. Alabama's football program is a dynasty because of Bear Bryant. Now, they went through several shitty coaches to get to Saban, and they had some really bad years in the late 90s, early 2000s prior to him showing up. But basically, he was able to take his amazing coaching ability and combine it with a dynasty school. Okay. If Saban had done that with, say, Tennessee, that is way more impressive. Not that it takes away from his ability to what he has achieved, because we will never see a coach do.
I don't think you're getting at his question, Trace.
Yeah. I'm talking about like the
who's winning more.
Who's winning more the rest of their career?
Oh, okay.
Like how many more national championships?
CT.
I don't know. Like I don't know if CT wins. It's
how many more seasons is he gonna do?
I mean, the way he's going right now, he could go another 5 years. That's the thing. Like he's still in amazing shape.
He's gonna do it until they tell him to stop coming.
Well, he's filming a movie now. He didn't go to the reunion. Did you guys see that?
That's because he was filming the movie.
Okay.
He's already filmed the movie. Movie's done. Right? Movie's done.
Okay.
He's making too much money from this. Why wouldn't he come?
Yeah.
He works a few months.
He gets 100. He gets 100K to just show up. He gets money for every episode he appears on. So he makes like another 20 grand for sticking around to the end. And then if he makes the final, he's walking away with an easy 6 figures if it's the right situation. I mean, since Invasion, he hasn't lost a final if he makes it.
Oh, he's won 3 of the past 4 seasons now. That's crazy. Like that's just, it's just crazy that they've let that happen.
Especially now. Like in this era of the show that someone's for, it's just mind-boggling.
Yeah, this is like the run Johnny went on from Rivals through free agents. I mean, it really is at this point, but this is more impressive to me because the seasons are longer, bigger cast, way more grueling, way more mentally grueling than it was back then, because back then the show was over in 6 weeks. This is like 10
and it's also
10,
he took
weeks.
a season off in that time frame too because he wasn't on Battle of the Seasons.
Yeah, like CT's been on every season since Invasion, hasn't he? He's been on every.
No,
season.
He takes Vendettas off.
He took Vendettas off. Okay.
Yeah.
Rob, what do you think all the other podcasts are talking about today? What do you think the number one point, like what they're leading the show off with?
I think a lot of people are talking about the decision with the money. That seemed to be a big point. I'm telling you, like when I wanted to see, I always want to check to see what the people are discussing that aren't us,
Most of the stuff I saw was hated the final, but shout out to CT and Kaycee is essential.
But like that, everyone was like, "Oh, they shared the money at the end." That was a big takeaway I saw. Like I thought the decision at the end, like it's just not TV to me. Like, all right, fine, like whatever.
I mean, it was the right move. I mean, Grant, it was the right move. Like nobody that was in that final was an enemy, and by not giving them money, you turn them into an enemy. And I mean, the moment they said you can decide how to split up the money, the first thing that hit my head is I would keep 800 and divide the other 200 grand. But I wouldn't have done it equally, but they did. So props to them for doing it, but okay, whatever.
I don't know if there's a right move here. I mean, I think whatever, if they wanted to keep it, I would have been fine with it. If they wanted to split up the money, I'd be fine with it too. It's their money, they won, right? The show set up the rules for them to be able to do it. It's not their fault. It's just what production allowed.
I think it's much more interesting just from a discussion point of even having this decision in the show.
Quite frankly, this is where you would want Johnny Bananas to win, because he would say, I'm going to split the money, Teach. Everybody else gets $1 and I'll take the rest.
That's what I think too. It's like they can do it. So they could give them like 67 cents if they wanted to. They just do whatever.
Sure.
Like, yeah. I don't know. I just didn't. The thing is with these, when they've had these before, it's like Hunter and Ashley have an actual relationship outside the show and including the relationship on the season, versus just people who like it's not that significant.
Yeah.
I don't know. I think there's definitely some like cognitive bias here where they don't necessarily perceive the money as theirs yet, right? But they're giving them $200,000 of their own money. They gave that away. That was their money that they gave away.
Yeah.
After taxes, much less. Really, after taxes is, I guess when you think about it from that perspective, it's much less, because after taxes, it's like $50,000 a piece, right? Like $60,000 a piece. That's how much they really.
No. They each got 50K.
Because it was 100K for each pair.
100K for each pair. So they all split.
I'm talking about from the perspective of CT and Kaycee. That's how much they lost.
Oh, that's how much I see what you're
yeah,
saying.
yeah,
okay,
yeah,
it's even a little less than that. It's even
because when you think about it,
it's about 40% is what you're going to lose in taxes.
At least.
Yeah, it's about 40%.
Yeah. So 60K each. That's really what it is.
Yeah.
Isn't it taxed more after a certain bracket of how much money you're getting?
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. That's 40% because a normal tax rate for that would have been around 33 to 35. And then the luxury tax and the game show winning tax hits you. So it's like 40 to 43% something. I looked it up once. So that's why it was imperative for Evan to win and then split the money accordingly, because they would have only gotten like 30% taken away, but then Evan didn't split the money. So
I should say, Devin, like there have been plenty of other shows who have been extremely critical. Like I know Ben on his show off the hook, they're not pleased with how things have progressed with this season. There's been other people who have been very critical, but I do think from a common parlance perspective, the two main things I saw were people were agreed with us that the setup of this was a complete sham and that it was just the one leg at the end and how they paired people and teamed people, like that was all a joke. That was common thought. And then also people like that CT and Kaycee split the money at the end. So whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I liked it. I wish that's how the real world actually worked. But I did like it.
I just even think from a production perspective, it was just odd to me to have them have that decision. Like I didn't even think it was necessarily bad, but like
I liked it.
I mean, resonate with me.
I liked it. To be honest, it's one of those things that I'm glad they tried it. They did it one time. Do they do it again? I don't know. I'd have to think about it. I didn't mind it at all, to be honest.
I mean, I personally think it's fine because I kind of like the idea that if you make the final, you have to win money. And if the winners graciously give you something, then cool. But I mean, the last few seasons, it's been winner take all. So it would
have been much more interesting if they would have told them that much earlier on, right?
Well, it's all much more interesting if they tell them what's going on.
Because think about it.
It just is.
Then at that point, they're playing to win, right? They know that there's a big advantage to winning. You decide who gets the money, right? So that's interesting. Yeah. And then from the viewer's perspective, we know that there's real stakes to win here, right? And then it gives them something to market around. I think that's a huge.
And they've done that previously too when they've done this, like with Rivals 3 and with
Final Reckoning. They told them,
they told them at the beginning of the final they would have a decision to make, and it wasn't hard to figure out what
honestly, that is what saved the Rivals 3 season. Is that final had so much tension because Sarah got paranoid Johnny was going to steal the money, and he did.
But it's also even prior to the final when they'd have previews and stuff, like they would advertise that, and they didn't do that this time for whatever reason.
Well, honestly, it's a pretty lame thing because it's not like you're stealing from your partner, you're just distributing money. That's it.
I think part of my thing with it too, though, it just goes more into the season where it feels like there was a lack of differentiation between characters. Like I had a hard time sorting out what the different like sort of competing storylines were with everybody's character arc.
Yeah, I just don't think it mattered. It just didn't matter.
Yeah.
So is there anything, let's go through anything that we absolutely have to talk about before we end this. Have we missed anything that we 100% need to talk about?
No,
I think so.
I think we're good. I just thank God we still have all stars. I mean,
who's even the biggest character on this season? Was it CT? Because I didn't think he had a big story.
I think Tori probably was the biggest character of the season.
Yeah.
She had more screen time than anybody when it was all said and done.
Who's the MVP of the season?
I would say most valuable characters, or is that what we're looking at it from, or what?
Or just from like overall, who brought the most overall enjoyment?
I think it's Amanda.
Yeah, I would agree. Amanda by far was the most enjoyable character.
But I'd have Amanda first.
Because I love CT, but like he really didn't do anything this season.
He was in more Warlords 2 mode with this season. Like I'm curious where he's going to come out when I finish tallying up the fantasy points, because usually it's who wins. You're in first or second, but he really didn't do much throughout this season.
What's the Trace Armstrong hot take of the week?
I don't know that I have like a hot take. I mean, I think I've said them and everybody agreed with mostly.
I think he said Kaycee didn't deserve to win at all. I think their season was bad.
No. I give her props for winning. I said she fell ass backwards into this win in the final. Okay. Like you can't dispute that. All right. The circumstances aligned perfectly for her to win, but it wasn't the way it happened. It's not like it was plotted out, like she plotted it out. Like she had a broken toe. She comes in second place on the team portion, was completely horrendous at puzzles, had no business winning the final, but because of the way it was formatted, she fell ass backwards into it. And props, she made it to the final. She did what she had to do. And then when the only thing that mattered in the final was the last leg, she made it happen. She gutted through it for that last leg. So, I mean, props to her, but whatever.
Yeah, I would say this is almost like when Peyton Manning won the Super Bowl in 2015 with the Broncos, where he was terrible for most of that season.
The noodle arm, yes.
Well, it was like, because like you would look at Kaycee's career and you would never say she was an undeserving champion by what she's done, even if her performance in this final was suboptimal, and then she kind of, and then
great
she got
comparison.
Because like, I mean, those teams, there was a probability that they would win the Super Bowl either seasons. Season was the lowest probability they had, and it just happened to be the season that they won it.
Yeah, like you would never look at Peyton Manning's career and say, "Oh, he didn't deserve to win 2 Super Bowls." But even if in a vacuum, that one Super Bowl,
that one season
year,
was a pretty bad season, but he smartly retired off the win.
Like,
he didn't
do remember how bad his numbers were from that year.
He didn't pull a Favre and come back one season too many.
Okay.
All right. The only other thing I will say, and it's not really about this season, it's more about where we go from here. So the availability calls that I am hearing have gone out. I know they call a lot of people, but the net has been widened further in the veterans pool than it has been in years past. So my hope is they realize that this season just did not work. And they are going to take a page from All-Stars and bring some heavy hitter veterans in. And sure, we're going to have some rookies. That's fine. You always need to have rookies. You've got to inject new blood. But I heard that they pushed the leave date back from January to March to allow them a chance at a better cast. That is the hot news, hot take I have heard. They were originally thinking January. They've moved it to March, which means we're probably not going to get a challenge season until June or July. So we're going to have a long break. We'll get to, forget this happened. And then hopefully they come back with a good one here this summer.
I think is like the cast obviously does need to improve, but I do think like they can't have this happen in next season's final to me. This is unacceptable that they have this.
Just do what they did on the first All-Stars final. Very satisfying, tested people.
Well, I don't even think that's the ideal outcome. It's better than this, but
that's not even a great format, to be honest.
No, it's better than this.
I mean, sure, but
if you're gonna go this route where you want people, if you want to have twists and turns where you change partners and depending on where you finish, you get to choose your next partner. I mean, ideally that would be great. I mean, I still think that they should just flat out go for a duel 3 at this point. That would be, to me, the ideal situation. Do a duel, but don't do these janky pair ups in the final. Just let them run the final as an individual and bring back a heavy hitter cast. Because that is, I think, between the picks, the politics, the competitiveness, you've got to, if you have a competitive cast and you're able to put together a decent individual final, it will be a good season. Keep it simple.
All right. So for scheduling, we'll probably do the reunions.
We will.
Will we? Do we have to?
I mean, we can keep them like super brief.
All right.
I cannot. I was really wanting.
I'm not even there. That's so crazy to me.
We may do it. We may not do it. We may do something else.
Because that means we're recording on the 23rd.
We don't have to record on the 23rd. We can do it. We can
do it after Christmas.
We can do it anytime we want. Just for scheduling in general, the patrons will still get one episode per week, no matter what. For the general listening, it'll still probably be close to one episode per week. There's probably going to be weeks where we don't record just because it'll be nice to get somewhat of a break now.
Yeah.
But a lot of the time there will be an episode.
There will be something. And we're going to start putting some of the Chronicles back on the public feed. So Duel 2 will be forthcoming on the public feed. So we are going to get back, especially now that there's a long break between seasons. You will start to get more Chronicles on the main feed. But if you want to listen to them early, Patreon $4. Duel 2 is already on Patreon, and we already almost halfway through the Ruins. We've been going much slower for the Ruins because it's been such a great season. So if you want to get a head start, come a Patreon for $4. If not, they will eventually make their way to the public feed. All
right. Thank you for listening this season, everyone. We enjoy doing the recaps again. Even, like, I'll say this, I enjoy doing the recaps vastly more.
Yeah.
I enjoed watching the episodes, right?
Agreed.
And we heard that from a lot of people that they enjoyed listening to these more than they enjoyed the show. We appreciate the feedback, positive or negative. We appreciate the feedback. We do listen. Like there have been a lot of things that people have told us that we've made adjustments with, and I think have really made the show better.
Agreed.
And that we're always trying to do that. We keep trying to make the show better, keep giving the people what they want. So thank you for listening in. We'll talk to you again soon. Bye.